think it's time for you to have your lysergic acid. Drink this down and...
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Requiem Radio. We're starting off season 2 with myself and Hazy Dialects. Hazy, want to introduce yourself again?
Hello, everyone. It's Hazy Dialects, a bit of a schizo online, bit of an enigmatic individual, but I appreciate the privacy that comes with not posting on Twitter as infrequent as I do. And I'm with my co-host, and this is Requiem Radio. So we're about to delve into season 2, get you more familiar with us as individuals, as well as a bunch of questions that were asked on social media about some of the topics and matters that delve into our minds. To really fortify our existence, we gotta fortify our minds. Something like a Doctor Strange 2 sort of movie reference. So with all that out of the way, I can't wait to get into this episode, and welcome to season 2.
Yeah, and I'm pretty pissed what they did to Doctor Strange. They make him an idiot later down the road, but that's off topic, of course. But yeah.
Whoa, you don't like good movies.
Oh, okay.
Whoa.
Nah, I'm gonna fight you on that
Trash.
later. But
Whack
no,
trash. Whack
so yeah,
trash.
like Hazy said, we got some questions in. So as per my tweet, I said like, hey guys, I'll give you a shout out, of your question, and we'll go from there. But again, thank you for all our viewers for tuning in and helping out. We are planning in the future to set up a website and later a donation board. Currently, our big project Hazy is working on is setting up a YouTube channel for us where he could be able to post clips for our podcast, our more digestible bites, if you will. Also, we are reducing our times for the episodes and try to get it around an hour 30-minute mark instead of 2 hours, so it's more consistent for your viewership. But let's see. Yeah, and the reason I wanted to do this as well is because I realized that season 1, you didn't really know who like Solar Requiem was or who Hazy Dialects was, except for our intro and outro. So I thought it'd be nice to to have the episode dedicated to answering your questions, like, hey, who are these people? What are your thoughts on certain issues or things? And that would be a good way to go forward, definitely. But one of our first questions, and it's for both of us, from Birdie for Canary or Birdie. What are your core beliefs? What does it take to change core beliefs, and how many times a person can do it in life? So, that's for both of us. So, what are some of our core beliefs? Hazy, you want to go first?
The best way I can describe it is that individualism is possibly one of the things I really do cherish within any given society. The ability to maximize or access as much as possible one's true avenue of living a life in a strong level of freedom, as well as a core belief, a doctrine of fairness and at least consistency to some regard. I believe that values or beliefs and ideas are meaningless, or I would say nebulous, if we just um, concede to some level of contradiction or inconsistency in how we divulge these sort of things. Because no matter if you're stoic, um, level-headed, if you believe in, truth, justice, any of those things, it becomes a bit nebulous in nature if you don't believe in any level of consistency or fairness doctrine that administers these ideas. It becomes more or less a selective nature of ideas and how they are very selective in terms of their usage, and always continuously self-serving. I suppose as well as altruism, a ability to give on to others, as much as possible, as well as within reason of one's ability to do so, and um, seeking out that ability to do so to help out people less fortunate than others. I think those are some pretty, um, in terms of the easily accessible ones that I can come to mind for me. Those are the immediate ones that come up to me. So I usually have my values and moral systems kind of built around those things, and how can society kind of um, orchestrate itself around these tenets. But solar, What are some of your core tenets? Let them delve into your psyche for a little bit.
Yeah, definitely for me, I have it split pretty evenly. I like to put things in a little box, if that makes any sense. So if there's a topic, I think how could this fit in with it, or how could I strengthen my ideas? It's kind of like iron sharpens iron. So that's one of the reasons if you were listening to season one, I like debates because I like having my views challenged. But currently, I'm a paleo libertarian, so I advocate for strict interpretations of the Constitution. That's one, like eliminating government intervention in both the economy and enabling maximum personal freedom for each other's person. So I'm pretty what's the word for it? Meritocratic, I believe is how you say it, where it's like, based on personal achievement. So I don't really buy the whole shtick that, someone should be like 100% proud of something they didn't like earn or accomplish. I'm very much, reap what you sow type of guy. But that would be more of my economics, because definitely that falls in the field of like Murray Rothbard and people like Hoppe, where it's Austrian economists and political thinkers who came up with a lot of this stuff. That's something I've really enjoyed getting into. It's been really fun reading about. I'd say for ethics, I've been battling that for a long time, and it was always for me a fight between consequentialism and Kant and like those views, like deontology. And eventually down the road, I discovered like something. It was like a third option, if you will. It was like, hey, here's virtue ethics. It's a moral philosophy that emphasizes the role of the individual characters and virtues in determining what's morally right. So what really stood out to me about that is because unlike the consequentialist theories, like such as utilitarianism, which I wrote a whole essay debunking it because I hate utilitarianism with a passion, like that focuses on like the outcome of actions, or even like deontological theories like Kant. He emphasizes, well, it's our rule and duty. Well, virtue ethics says like, no, you're both wrong. I actually transcend that stuff, and we focus more on like what is the concentration of the moral character of the person making the decision. So I like that a lot because it cultivates like virtuous traits within individuals that could have a later greater impact on society. But besides that, I definitely say I'm pretty proud Catholic. Spanish, Cuban, anti-communist, anti-fascist, anti all that like authoritarian bullshit. And what else? Oh yeah, I'm really pro-life. So that's basically all for me. Let's see what else. Hazy, did you want to add on any more before we get to the next question in regards to do you believe, like, was it take to change someone's core belief?
Oh,
Hey, Hazy, there.
it's a fascinating idea because I just thought it was interesting to bring up how, well, a lot of people bring up how, what it does it mean to change someone's core beliefs, and often enough, it's usually that it's not truly reflective of what they actually value, and normally, that's what you have to get at the helm of. Like if someone wanted to maximize a society in which women feel as though they are valued for like the biological like elements like fundamental ability to create children, to foster a life in that nature, then some conservatives might believe that withholding as much liberties as possible and regaling the mother to and the other significant other in this sense to purely the basically the kitchen or the household will like ensure that she is far more appreciative of the since the man is handling all other facets of society. But normally, as human beings, we love our independence to some regard, and that ability to choose maximizes our sincerity of committing to a role. So usually, we're not typically trying to change someone's core values. Rather, we are trying to show them how um, impractical the way of going about maximizing their worldview is. And sometimes that might overlay with our worldview and perspective, thus getting us closer to a worldview that ideally we can both share in. So that's usually what happens when it comes to core beliefs. Core beliefs also can be a byproduct of feeling as though no one is truly upholding that notion or idea. For example, we sometimes look at something like race swapping within media and narratives and TV shows, and someone might say something to the effect of, "I don't care if someone's gay, straight, lesbian, or Indonesian. It's all about good character design. And someone might uphold that same belief too. This is not a core belief, but this is just an example of how someone might be married to an idea or concept, but realize that when the tire hits the road, that this is not applicable. So sometimes people may change the race of a character or an individual, and the writing is exceptional. But someone will then go back to the core idea of like someone like Miles Morales, who is a popular character within media, and go, well, Miles Morales isn't Spider-Man, despite the fact that most people love the story and enjoy the games that have come out with him involved. And so the idea of it doesn't matter so long as the quality of whatever is being created stands the test of time is no longer like shown to be a proven concept by the people who espouse this idea. It's often just a proxy for dismissing the concerns of others who might want that level of representation within media. So that's my idea. That's my thought processes on core beliefs and how sometimes core beliefs are shown to be fraudulent due to how when when it comes to again consistent doctrine that most people don't uphold it, and it's more like a selective implementation to give an aesthetic of fairness or neutrality on the subject matter. So that's my thought process on it.
Yeah, no, it's a really good way to look at it too. Definitely, how it's kind of like a chicken and the egg type scenario at times. For me, I'd say when it comes to changing core beliefs, is to acknowledge that there is a core belief to begin with. So I try to approach it by making presuppositionalist arguments. So basically, what that means is that I say something like, "Hey, we both have presuppositions that are like fundamental to our very being, like the reality that shapes our worldview." So like I go from, okay, instead of me trying to like attack around you, I'm going straight for it, and I even attack with like engaging in that. So I would say like, yeah, we both have it's almost a fall on your own sword type trick, whereas like I'm stabbing you, but I'm stabbing myself too. Whereas like we both have worldviews that are our whole view. So I say let's play a game of chicken, if you will. Let's see who could go the longest without their worldview running into circular reasoning and can be coherent and non-contradictory. So an example would be you see like a lot of like Catholics do this, where we'll say the Bible is the word of God. That is our presuppositional truth, and then we go from there with knowledge and reasoning and arguments through like transcendental arguments to go forward. But it doesn't have to strictly be religious. It could be anything. It's like I could say capitalism is the best economic system ever, and then we go from there. Or if someone says Marxism is the greatest thing ever, we go from there. And I see, and when we play a game, like, okay, who could go the longest without their ideology contradicting itself? So that's definitely how I encourage people to approach like changing your beliefs. But also definitely know your settings and your audience and your people. Like you don't want to just meet some random guy you just met and be like, okay, I'm going to change your whole worldview. It doesn't really work like that because people are going to have their like guard up, their borders up. They're not going to be trustworthy. So like even if you say something that's true, they're not going to be accepting it. It's just going to be pushed back. They're going to be very upset and angry about it.
Another
But
thing worth
yeah.
considering, what you brought up about presuppositions, that a lot of core beliefs are a byproduct of this, or that innate assumption that like everybody thinks a particular way about an idea. Like for
Yeah, and
instance,
that's what I love about presuppositionalism because it just straight up says like, all right, we're all ignoring the elephant in the room. We all have beliefs that are like dogma to us. Let's see whose dogma is the least contradictory and go from there, basically.
yeah, and one of the things I find to be interesting is that presupposition uh, that is birth a core value that for a lot of people that is a presupposition is idea of violence, whether or not we should enact violence. Then when you start to look at it from a more practicality sense, is that like sometimes police officers might have to enact violence to restrain an individual who is going through a manic episode, or to ensure that people don't cross particular lines in terms of rights that will only result in a larger conflict arising. And in these particular instances, these are just probably some of the most sensible I can just divulge onto the audience. In these particular instances, we look at violence as having a utility beyond just the outward divorcing ourselves from violence. So someone who might have had anti-violence, might have been a pacifist, might accept the notion that like violence does have its utility within society, thus changing the core beliefs about it, because they had the presupposition shows that it is impractical for a functioning society that desires peace from others who are divorcing it themselves from it, believing that some ideas that they're championing or campaigning for require some level of physical confrontation. So, just wanted to add on to what you were saying there.
I'm sorry, I was muted there. I was gonna say thank you for bringing that up. We actually got some questions that were brought in from other people who want to be like, private. One of these are from one of my guys from my libertarian group chat. He wants to ask us both this. What are your guys' opinion on the non-aggression principle? Do you feel that is absolute? I'll let you take that one first.
The non-aggression principle is kind of it's hard to again, with the non-aggression principle, it kind of requires an assumption that both people will abide by it, and while the value of it often requires some level of understanding that there's a far larger body of power that exceeds the two individuals in this question, such as police officers, state enforcement, restrainment to like solitary confinement, whether that be a byproduct of like mental psychosis or a violation of the laws as they exist, which results in someone might being confined to being convicted and be pinned to a penitentiary. Either one of these are kind of like these are things that supersede are on us as an everyday individual from like harming each other. But the worst thing about a non-aggression principle, I suppose, that comes to my mind immediately is that there's always our systems are always supposed to accommodate those who are acting within good faith. But I also believe that societies should also operate with the notion that some people might explore good and natured and good-willed individuals as well. So I'm not quite sure, like in terms of what confines are they implementing the non-aggression principle, but I do believe that there are certain circumstances where it is superseded by people being cognizant of your unwillingness to exert any level of physicality upon them.
Yeah, that's actually interesting you said that because I was gonna have a similar answer for me. The NAP, I see it as being a useful tool and a good rule of thumb, but I'd be wary to base your entire worldview and dogma on top of it fully. And like, all right, lower your pitchforks. All the libertarians listening to this, don't kill me just yet. Hear me out. I've noticed it ran into some of the same issues that when I was doing my paper on debunking utilitarianism. It's similar to what they have, where utilitarians like to say, "Oh, we're just doing everything that makes people most happy, most utility, bro." And to me, the first question I ask myself is, "What is happiness?" And when you try to put objective like terminology and analytics into a subjective term such as emotions or actions like aggression, like it begs the question to me like, okay, what does this mean though? What does it mean to non-aggress? What is aggression in this scenario? And then it starts to get into the weeds and brushes where it's like me scratching my head thinking like legality issues, stuff like what about self-defense? Like it may vary based on like an individual's interpretations, because even in the United States, for example, like there's tons of states that have laws on like how to deal with intruders. Basically, some will say like, do you have a right to kill them? Like which I think is like morally permissible, because if they're valuing your property over your life, then that simply means that it's that like you value that. Sorry, it means that they value your property more than they value their own lives. So I don't see it as being a thing like you chose to broke into this person's house, you chose to rob them. Like, how is it fair for me to assume that you're just here on, a tough time or a good thing? I don't know you. You broke into my house in the middle of the night. For all I know, you could be here to harm my family. You could be here to harm myself. So I'm going to engage in like lethal force to get you off. But at the same time, it gets dicey because you got to sit there and think, okay, well, what about scenarios where people are running away? What about like how do you fully know he's not just going to come back? Basically, more guns or more people to like to kill you. And
Absolutely.
It's just the ambiguity in the definition is what I'd say for what is aggression, especially when speaking to different people. They have different like verbiages of what they see as aggression, if you will.
And certainly a
And that,
society that
yeah,
is prosperous and is like very prosperous, very fruitful in terms of its economic um, like prosperity, you would not see circumstances like those occur. But I think that the non-aggression principle looks at a more idealistic society to some regard than one that kind of deals with some of the more practical circumstances that you would have to deal with.
yeah, and
Like
like
if
I said
someone
earlier,
is
don't
in
get
a
me wrong. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I still think the NAP is a good rule of thumb. Like, why do I want to harm
absolutely,
you if I don't know you? Like, it's like I'm not causing you any harm or grievance. I'm just doing my thing. Like, that's a good rule of thumb. But sometimes there's going to be unique scenarios where that could be more difficult, if that makes any sense. Where it's you scratching your head, like, is this okay for me to do this or not? It's Hazy. You're gonna
yes.
like this. I want to ponder your mind really quick. Can I?
Go ahead.
So there's a funny scenario basically about the NAP where it says a man is approaching you with a shotgun screaming, "I'm going to kill you." But on him, he has a bunch of babies basically strapped to him, like covering his whole body. So the question is like, how do you go about this situation? Because if you shoot the guy, you're gonna kill a kid. But if you let him keep going to you, he's gonna kill you. So it's a interesting scenario, like the NAP, where it's like, well, if you shoot him, you violate the NAP because you just killed an innocent child that wasn't aggressing upon you. But if you don't shoot him, he kills you. So what do you do in this scenario?
What's interesting about this particular scenario is that either person who is involved in this scenario is violating the non-aggression principle. But for me, what would unfortunately, I think the demise of my personhood would be is being in a situation where I would have to sacrifice multiple, if not basically have to sacrifice multiple people in order to preserve my personhood, especially if it was someone as young as a newborn child in a situation where a person is basically holding these individuals hostages to enact violence on my personhood with the lethality. But at the same time, I could perceive it as being understandable. Now this is an even interesting situation. I can even see someone flipping this on his head and deciding, no, wait, hold on now. You could easily end this person's life, potentially. Well, if even we grant that we kill one child in the process of doing so, we save a multitude of children in this scenario in which the person is like using children, literal like infants, as a way to safeguard himself from any personal harm. That is a person who you would want to do and to ensure it will never be able to reenact that potential situation again. So it would be, even if you took my position, you don't have to. You can even argue that it is even more moral to end his life expeditiously, to do it as soon as possible.
Yeah, that's fair one. Make it quick and clean. I like that a lot. Um, oh, really quick. We got another question. This one's particularly too hazy. From Arkonda Yasamiya. He said, love the aesthetic and wants to know, also DM me privately, what do you use for image developing and what are your thoughts on like AI?
I usually use Photoshop. I use a little bit of PicCrew art. I've always been fascinated with those two things, and I've been really getting into Adobe. Those are like my go-to for art and design. Usually I try to delve, that's usually my go-to for art and aesthetics. So I appreciate the love for my art and design. I appreciate people liking that. As for AI and art, it's kind of fascinating because I think we've reached a point in society where things that were inaccessible to ever deliberate on are now becoming our everyday ponderance. For example, I think a lot of people, when they thought about flying, for instance, was an inconceivable notion, but now people have the ability to travel all the time. What doesn't bother people is not exactly the advancements, but the idea that something else is becoming obsolete in the process of doing so, which is just the advancements of technology, as like someone like Andrew Yang used to talk about, and how society is continuously doing so. It's not going to be an argument of principle, or it's going to be more of an argument of practicality when it comes to businesses and manufacturing jobs. Just going to look at what is the most effective way, what is most cost efficient, and things of that nature. For me, AI is kind of a fascinating one, particularly because our machinations of the mind have always been considered a holistically unique domain. Artistry, music, even the way I speak and I inflect upon the microphone is something that considered holistically unique upon my own. And sure, there are ventriloquists, there are people who have the ability to mimic my intonations. That was a human being that was doing this. The replication of software, AI doing that, was perceived as something more of a Tom Clancy, Splinter Cell, or something of a 2077 cyberpunk. But interesting enough, when you think about Cyberpunk 2077, it's not based in the future so far apart that you couldn't even feasibly believe it to be a case. Rather, Cyberpunk 2020 is a game that's placed on a timeline that we could end up in eventually on our deathbeds perceiving as reality itself. So I believe that it speaks about how more immediate AI is nowadays. And people might point to things of the nature of perfection, such as multiple fingers, limbs, extremities, what have you. Um, but that is only the criticisms of a system that is still in its infancy, meaning that refinement is only going to get more exceptional as the system learns and is being taught by others. For me, AI can be a force for unimaginable good in the sense that it can help us um, figure out in a more expedient fashion certain diseases, like eliminating certain trials and errors we have to go through. A model sheet that has to run through an extensive amount of tests to ensure that this vial will be the particular one that ensures hair growth will be chopped down in time. It makes all these things exceptional in the way that we can further enhance and enrich society with the imperfections that are often plaguing us. However, in terms of the creative field, I am very apprehensive about that. I am somebody who, at the very least, would like to consider himself someone who hones his art and someone who is passionate about what he creates. Um, the accessibility of art to be in the hands of everyone, and now the accessibility to be taught this art, is certainly something that has come with the internet and everyone making art to some degree or not. But with AI art, there's an automation to it all, to the point where eventually I believe that it will be similar, or at the very least on par with some people's art, to the point where the fascination and intrigue will probably be more or less about the person and individual in question, and the thought processes, the traumas, the adventures, the personhood that is about that will be more what we'll delve into than anything else. Because um, one of the things that is being teased out here about personhood is that AI, artificial intelligence, is a replicating system. But a lot of what we are as human beings is that replication, is that looking upon something else and learning and understanding it through our own replication, our own individualism, is adding our own eccentricities to that, but at the same time, that is our unique personhood that is a part of that art. Now we are looking at something that is able to do that and possibly give that little eccentricities without necessarily needing to have that experience and or that passion to it. And while, again, as I reiterated prior to this, there is imperfections, I think it's going to be a bit disheartening in the world of artistry and expressions of that, where people have become so diligently creative and passionate about something, to have it replicated in shorter periods of time without the diligent nature of looking towards what it means to even create art in that regard. I think as a craftsmanship, you're always going to want to enjoy that part of the art. And sure, there are still going to be people who, even if that becomes the case and it becomes so ubiquitous that even studios find it advantageous to do so, I still would find myself looking towards those who are still like handcrafters to some regard, despite the fact that I am a digital artist to some regard. As snobbish as that sounds. I think if anything, I hope that's a succinctly way to take away from what I've said about AI art and delving into like the human or personhood of like humanity in a sense. It's going to be interesting to see how it will affect other facets of life because now people are making romance bots, they're making all these things. And if not anything else, I would say look at Stand and Lope Complex. Some movies of those natures really delve into what it means to be a person or what is personhood when transhumanism is at the precipice of humanity and how we deal with the digital age. That's my thoughts on the subject matter.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. And for me, one, Cyberpunk 2077, I don't get how they made the games like they're trying to portray it as like it was a bad thing, but like it'd be pretty fucking base to live in some futuristic world where I could have like, super like technology shit like that like at my disposal. Like it's funny because you could go like vendors and parlors for like $300, get like some cybernetic implant in your arm, or like no, not bucks, credits, and just like be able to like mess people up and stuff, like have all kinds of things. Like
I
yeah, it
mean,
has its drawbacks, but that sounds kind of fucking base. You can't lie. Like you wouldn't want to be
it's
Johnny Silverhand.
it's like it's fascinating. Well, I don't think that Cyberpunk, if we're talking about the Netflix series, wasn't necessarily saying that the advancements were the problem, but the addiction that people have towards things and the idea of giving into compulsions.
It's
Pornography,
funny you bring that up
TikTok,
too. Like
um,
yeah, sorry, go
30
ahead.
second videos, pornography, TikTok, 30-second videos, all these things are very like divisive for modern day society, and people often like chastise these devices as the problem and the issue here. But it's kind of the addiction we have towards the immediate endorphin rush that we get from these things, and I think that the resilience to say no or to refrain from something becomes very harder when things of this nature are becoming more ubiquitous in society, and the ease of getting it is simply as far away as a click. So that's why I usually think that they were referring to when they were talking about cyberpunk and the dangers of technology.
Oh yeah, and it's funny you mention that too, because paleo libertarianism kind of answers and solves the solution of cyberpunk, where you have society which has completely compressed. What's it? Sorry, um, forwarded, if you will, and completed like technology. They don't have to worry about that issue as heavy. Their main concern is like what you said, degeneracy, addiction, drugs, all like cesspool stuff like that. Like paleo libertarianism comes in as like, hey, economics, that's a green light, you're doing good, but like when it comes to like morality and like that system, that's also important. An example in real life, if you will, is like Japan has a pretty solid economy on the world scale, and they're notable for being really prestigious, and that's because they're on a volcanic island. They don't have natural resources like coal or anything like that they could just like have low labor people to mine. The issue with that though is that it forced them to like sink or swim. Like you have to go to college, you have to get a degree because you can't afford to do a labor job if there's no labor jobs available. And the downside of this is like, good job, you got a booming economy, but you also have like number one depression, like in like any developed country, least amount of births, least amount of marriage, most amount of suicide, all these negative things basically to the point where the government's like, hey, you guys need to like, have sex, have kids, because we're about to like drop off really hard because the older generation shouldn't be twice as big as the young one. And that's like a scary thought to have because that's like a very big whiplash effect, if you will. But that's just something interesting I thought of. But in regards to AI though, going back onto that, the my main concern of AI, I used to be extremely anti AI, like a grug smash computer, grug smash screen, but I later like changed it up a bit because one, I had access to like the new Bing AI thing, and it's been having a blast, like making whatever I want. Like I made Warhammer 40k Ultramarine versus like hordes of like stormtroopers, and that was like fun to make. But for me, I'd say I'm worried not now, but in the future, like give it 10 years where it's so advanced that you can't tell a difference in like normal image of a human and like an AI one, where people could use that as blackmail, where I could be like, oh, there's a shady guy named Bob, and he's took a picture of Susie's face or got a picture of Susie's face online. He uploaded that to an AI generator and now has a bunch of pictures of her naked, or like stage pictures of her doing pornos, like really degenerate, gross stuff. And then he's like, I'm gonna blackmail you now until you give me money or something like that. And it's so irreseparable, no one can really prove if the image is false or if it's real, except for obviously Susie knows like I never done this, and Bob knowing he artificially made this. And that's what I find scary about AI.
Actually, speaking upon what you just touched upon right there, there was a lady who recently got scammed by a voice modulator that allowed them to give the impression that her daughter was captured. And things of that nature is really interesting when we talk about like the morality of um, AI. And I believe that this means that like the severity of like prosecution has to be extreme. It has to be. It has to be some of the most extreme out there. It has to be like 20 or 10, like 20 to 40 years within jail, to like blackmail people would like literally forge information. Because in terms of something I've often not been able to really conceptualize is how many hours of YouTube is uploaded onto the platform on a regular basis. And what's interesting about how many hours daily YouTube gets is, uploaded is like in the millions, I believe. No, 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 it's not in millions. It's around 3.7 new videos with around 271,000 hours. Knowing this is a lot of information for people to take on a regular basis. And more importantly, if we started having people being able to create misinformation that is so akin to what you would expect from the creator themselves or the individual in question, it'll be hard to derail that. The machine in which creates misinformation can travel faster than the corrections because you're doing far more work. It's called the bullshit machine, I believe. It is the idea that, speaking wise, that the truth always comes out. However, it is far more easier to misinform people than the effort it takes to correct said misinformation. Which is why I believe that in the nearby future we would have to have laws on book that really stamps out a severity of legal precedents for anyone using that technology for nefarious reasons as the ones we've been delving into here. Like it has to be the case. It cannot be a slap on the wrist. It cannot be, oh well, he didn't know. It has to be treated as completely inexcusable to replicate someone's humanhood or personhood for the sake of defamation. That is probably some of the worst of it because it's the far
Yeah,
more
but look at it
convincing.
even on like a larger scale. Like, what's stopping me from doing that for a politician? Like, imagine if we had this technology I'm speaking of now, where I could make a video of Joe Biden and I could type in Joe Biden hushed whispers admits the 2020 elections rigged. Even though, like, for majority of people, that's fake, that could cause like a big uprising where it's so accurate. We're like, wait, is this like actually him, or is this him speaking? And like AI video, even like that's what I find to be a bit disturbing and scary down the road.
Yeah, defaking. One of the things I thought was kind of interesting a while back ago is that somebody said, "Oh yeah, AI again." I think it's such a myopic myopic view to just talk about the limitations because limitations of humanity is something fascinating because we're always pushing ourselves, and usually that is so incremental that it's like it needs to be put into the Guinness Book of World Records when it comes to anomalies within the system. When it comes to technology, it's far different since it's always progressing. Clunky phones, being able to leave your house with a phone, is now just a case where Blackberries were phones that you had to type on, and then now keyboards are just digital. It's just a part of your screen now. I think the acceleration of technology has been wide the to observe. And I think if anyone wants to look at how fast technology can advance, one only needs to look at how the phone of all things has progressed from the 70s to current time. Um, but to get back to what you were talking about there is that I think we've already seen it on social media above all else that people are willing to misinform people because they believe that whatever they're speaking about has such a moral obligation to whoever they are and their principles and beliefs. They believe that misinformation is just a byproduct of doing business. A pride parade had someone edit a kid onto the shirt and said disgusting, they're coming for your children, like why are drag queens hot, something to that effect.
Oh, I saw that
um
where it was like a T-shirt. It was like map or something like that. It had a kid on it, and it was like really
yes.
disgusting. And I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, but could you imagine if the original picture wasn't even online or had never been uploaded? He would have no way of fighting against the
That's what I'm saying. Like this could be potential thing that could call mass civil unrest. Is what I'm saying. Where
yes.
especially if everyone having access to a phone, that could be very dangerous, very fast. Like
Now
hell, I could
it
even
serves
like
you
double
right.
down. Yeah, no, I could double down, make it worse. I could put like out now like a fake AI video of like, George Floyd 2.0 being and like have a caption, they keep killing like these people. We need the riot to show them what's up. And it could be a completely fabricated video, but people are going to get pumped up because they want to get angry at something. You're going to start, rioting and destroying stuff again. So like it's going to be like the Floyd riots. Like
Or
it
what
could
if
cause
somebody just
mass
finds
civil
enough?
unrest. Yeah.
No, it could cause absolutely unrest. Or what somebody just finds enough voices and lines from George Floyd, puts it through a modulator, puts it online, and is like, "Oh, hey guys," like is talking to one of his family members, like, "Man, I ain't dead. Like, I don't know what the media is talking about." Like, it's gonna be like someone's gonna have to go to the mortuary to literally prove this guy is dead. Like this, like whoever is putting this out in the world, and it's a danger. It's to the point where a safe haven for a lot of people is just going to be like, unless we do something about the severity of legality costs, like it's going to be um it behooves you to like have some recording of stuff you've done, like separate from like anything on the internet. Like, oh, hey, wait, hold on. I know that I wasn't there and I didn't say any of these things because this is the original recording. Like, just keeping that on file is just an insane thing to always have to be concerned about. But that's I've now, granted, it's good to know that AI technology is a bit complex to even do something of that nature, but it's the fun part. We're at the fun part of technology where people are going in like, oh, look, you can just make Patrick sing "Love" by Keisha Cole or something of that nature. But um, when it starts becoming more convincing, is when I think I was on TikTok a couple of weeks ago where Drake was just discussing his collaboration with 21 Savage, and I thought nothing of it
Oh,
until
that
I
shit
heard
was
him.
ass.
Yeah, I thought nothing of it until I heard him say, it was just a euphoric experience with me kicking my feet up in the air, and I was like, wait a minute, wait a minute, hold on, and I looked at the video, I was like, oh shit, this was AI generated. Wait a minute.
No, it was that. Drake was on a recent feature, and it was like the most dog shit I've ever heard. It was him in the
Oh yeah,
background, be like, "And you love me?" And I'm like, "Bro, what was that light skin looking ass shit I just heard?" Like, hell nah, Drake. I don't
oh
want
my
to hear
gosh, it's
this
been
shit.
terrible.
Nah, man, I swear. Like, Drake's the type of guy to like be kicking his feet up while he's texting. He's like laying in his bed wearing a bathrobe, and he's like curling his little toes and be like, "Oh, tee hee, I'm gonna message Millie Bobby Brown right now."
The funniest
Sorry,
part
that
is
one was
that
a bit too far. That was too far. I'm sorry.
yeah. We're about to have our memories fly with the way you're acting in this
Chat, we're
podcast
gonna
here.
have to edit that one out.
One of the funniest things I think I came from the All My Dogs podcast. I mean, All the Dogs podcast and All the Dogs album from Drake is J. Cole said, "Being Drizzy, this shit is like the Super Bowl." And then Drake responds with, big as the Super Bowl, but the difference is it's just two niggas rapping what they did in the studio. I'm like, yeah, I guess. I don't know why you, I don't know why you needed to elaborate. That was what was happening here, but thank you. I think
Yeah, no, I ain't trusting Drake. I'm not. I see those memes as like, would you rather have $1 million or live like a month with a celebrity? And like one's like Drake. I'm like, man, I'm taking a bag and leaving. Nah, fuck Drake. I ain't getting anywhere near that guy.
Absolutely. I
Corny.
don't know
He's
these
a
people.
corny ass motherfucker. That's all he is.
Yeah.
But I'm
Thank
sorry.
you.
Let's get
Excellent
back on
question.
topic. Yeah. What's up?
Excellent question. Thank you. That was a pretty excellent question. I got
Yeah, no, that was a really good question. Thanks, Birdie. Or no, that wasn't Birdie. That was Libertarian guy. 1 minute. Yeah, I got a lot of questions. I'm sorry about that. I'm
Oh,
going through
brother,
them
this
right
guy's
now.
shouting out wrong people.
Yeah, no, I promise to shout you out. Just let me get back in this. I'll run it back. Don't worry. Let me see. Next question that should be asked. Oh, that was Archicabra who asked that. Kadra. All right, next one is from Indigo or Stoic Sith, and that's Valkyrie who was on our podcast episode. Hey Valkyrie or Indigo, if you're listening to this.
Okay.
What civilization are you the most interested in or have researched the most out of admiration or personal curiosity?
For me personally, one of the civilizations I've been looking into a lot is just well, there's two of them. I do enjoy looking at the Mayan culture. I like the look of sacrifices within societies, and I've also been a person who's been very fascinated by depictions of gods and illustrations, and how they used to do tattoos, and those things like really fascinate me. So that's like a society I've always been kind of really fascinated about, but also been really interested in the medieval ages, as well as particular rulers like Vladimir the Impaler, who was possibly the most gothic ruler who ever existed. From eating bread dipped in blood to bludgeoning nails into turbans, the man was a psychotic individual, especially with their particular way of greeting individuals who came to the land. I believe that prisoners who would come into the land would get a particular type of treatment. And Sola, do you know anything about this treatment that captured soldiers would get?
Well, he bludgeoned a spear through their anal cavity and out the mouth.
Yeah.
I know this is a guy that's based off of Dracula, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he was absolutely insane.
He's
That
one
guy
of those
was
guys.
crazy.
He's literally one of those guys. Like I'll just die. Nope. I'll take my own life. It's the most apropos circumstance to like use harakiri and just take your own life.
No, and the way he died was crazy. Where he had like him and like 300 men. He was surrounded by like 3,000, and then they're like, "Hey man, you got a family member that misses you. So you want to come with us? We can bring you home." He's like, "Obviously, it's a trap." And he's like outside of the gate. No, like we literally have food, bed, stuff for you, everything like that. We know your people were starving in there. And then he's like, "No, treachery, a lie. Oh men, attack!" And it was like his like 300 men versus like a whole 3,000. He's got slaughtered instantly, and that's like the last of Vlad the Impaler. I'm like,
I
okay,
love
like
that.
he's just a schizo. He was just a schizo. Like it was literally, it wasn't even an enemy. It was an allied nation. I was like, hey, one of your royal family members are concerned for you and wish to see you. And he's like, no, I don't believe it. Everyone's out to get me, so I'm gonna get everyone. And I'm like, well, he kind of forced our hand. We're not gonna let you kill us. So we got to kill you. But
Yeah, I love that. It's
yeah.
just I always call it the Joffrey the Joffrey duration. They're always in I would say eccentric rulers who are psychotic, but they don't last very long. You're like, then some of these people like they're not gonna be around for that very long. So I like how he ended. It's if you ever watched Game of Thrones, Joffrey is the character who not only he's a sadist.
Was it he
Um
said like your tongue or your hands or something like that to that like jester I was playing a song for him?
yes.
Yeah,
And
that he's fucked up.
yeah, it's one of those rulers who you're like, I can't see you getting old. I can you're when he got poisoned, you go, it's when it happens, you're shocked. But looking back at it, you're not surprised. You're like, this guy was he he wouldn't have been on the throne for long. It was an inevitability that he would have lost his life at some point. But yeah, those are the coaches I've been looking at too, and I'll pass it over to Solar. What's some coaches you've been interested into and really delving into due to their complex and rich history? And if you say Rome, I'll leave.
Obviously it's the Roman Empire. Think about it every single day, my guy. No, I love the Roman Empire from the rise of the Republic to the transition of it becoming an empire, all the way to, later down it goes to Pax Romana and then eventually the fall. It's just a very poetic story of like, one of the world's strongest empires. But mainly that just fascinates me is them just because how fucking massive and successful they were. But a close second would be the Mongols. I really like looking at the Mongolian Empire, mainly because they are the only empire to hold the achievement of fully conquering Afghanistan and the Middle East, which today, you ask any like general or historian or scholar, it is something that should be feasibly impossible by the geography of the nation and the cultural beliefs and customs held by the natives there. Yet they found a way to just like be like negate, table flip, here's Mirror Force. We're going through this right now. And I'm just like, all right, they just like broke through to Afghanistan. Like they conquered it. Like they did the unthinkable. And it's just a bunch of like big Mongolians riding horses and like shooting flaming bows. I'm like, yeah, good shit, man. But but not gonna lie, one of my favorite quotes, I believe it's from Emperor Augustus. He said, upon leaving his seat as emperor, I came to Rome as a city of stone and I left a city of marble. To me, that quote just goes so hard because like he advanced the society so much that he basically walked so Caesar could run. But I don't know. I really like this. Interesting.
Speaking of Caesar, one of the things I thought was kind of interesting is that I thought Caesar was holistically unique in his death. And I'm like, no, this is just kind of a commonplace way of them getting rid of the ruler. So, like,
Yeah, they did that shit a lot. That was not uncommon. Like people were getting ganked left and right. This shit was the mafia, basically.
it actually is kind of funny. It's like, if we just don't like you, we're just gonna stab you. We're just gonna like get this man out of here. He's messing up. At least they didn't do him like the French with them.
Yeah,
They were uh
guillotines.
I think I don't know in terms of replicating the extremeness of their land. I don't think there's like many others out there who are just like we're going to eradicate your entire bloodline. It's just
Yeah, no, that's insane. Like, but what's it? No, on the last thing on the Roman Empire, and we'll move on. But it was kind of funny because I've been rewatching The Sopranos, and it's a show about like Tony Soprano, like and being like a mob boss, Italian American, all fun stuff. There was a scene where they caught like a very like what's it Orthodox Jew, and he has the hat and the curly hair and everything like that, and they have him changed up to make sure he won't snitch. And the guy's just 100% okay dying. He's like, "Yeah, go ahead and kill me now." I was like, "Wait, you really are calling her bluff? You're gonna let us kill you?" He was like, "Yeah, well, I don't care." And I'm like, "Huh, we can't just kill you because that's make our situation worse." But anyway, the Jewish person went this monologue being like, "Oh, during the Roman times, we were persecuted, killed, blah 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 blah," and then he ended with, "The Jews are still here, but what about the Romans? Where are they now?" And Tony just wearing a bathrobe, looking pissed off because he had to get woke up. He says, "You're looking at them, asshole." And I just thought that was so funny because the Italians basically are the last remnants of the Romans, if you think about it, if you trace historical lineage, basically. So, like, they are technically the living, breathing Roman Empire, which is pretty cool. That and the
yeah,
Holy Catholic Church. Oh, yeah, based.
yeah.
Had to slide that in.
You know, went from Spartans to Gabagool. It's
The Gabagool.
a
No,
Gabagool.
fun to think about it. We just had a good comparison where, the basically hits put on people in the Roman Empire and, someone getting taken out is very much reminiscent of, like the Italian mafia where you need a guy whacked to get him whacked. So it was just them honoring their ancestors, just whacking
Yeah,
people.
I guess it really is in the blood.
Yeah, it's just in the blood to like stab people in the back, I guess.
Yeah, they really did
Oh
Mortal
yeah.
Kombat it.
Oh yeah. Let's see what else we got in line. Da-da-da-da. Next question. Next question. I'm trying to look for a good one for us. Mm. Oh, here's an interesting one. So, how do you maintain the equilibrium of righteousness and humility? And what does that balance look like for each of you? That is a question by Randy. Hey, Randy from all the Catholic Spaces. We're doing well, man, if you're listening to this. So basically, how do you balance? Well, I don't know. I never asked you. The questions are really like, how do you balance your political with religious slash, personal morality beliefs with, average modernity, like today life, basically. Like, how do you balance that stuff?
Righteousness. So the question is basically, how do you balance like your moral principles with like self-righteousness, and how do you keep a strong level of humility? I think I think it just always comes back to being mindful of your contribution to like any given situation or circumstances, because so long as you keep that in mind and where that and have a solid ground of that contribution, you won't ever go past the egotism, because sure, being mindful of your own accomplishments is good, but having that reinforced by external forces beyond you having to continuously reiterate them is possibly the biggest indication that you're doing something good. Is probably the biggest indication that everything that is inside of your own imaginations is reflected in within society itself. It is one thing to believe yourself to be a good worker. It is another thing to have it constantly reminded to you by other workers who talk about how exceptional you are, how this workplace wouldn't have functioned as well as it does now currently if it had not been for you. As for righteousness, righteousness is quite a pickle in terms of more complexity, because to operate or enact any belief, you have to believe in some level of moral righteousness. Um, Believe it's more about addressing moral fury and allowing that righteousness to become vindictive, malicious, or violent in nature. To believe that since I am in the right, it absolves me of how I might engage with the opposition or perceive them as being inhumane or less human than I am. While I do believe in my own morality and believe myself to be just, I reaffirm the notion that people around me are still operating with good faith and good cause and are guided by the idea of attempting to maximize society's joy, happiness, and just overall prosperity. Therefore, I believe that even if I do have a level of moral righteousness about my ideas, it won't um, transform into something vindictive and malicious, because I understand that people also believe themselves to be operating in an equal level of good faith and earnestness when trying to achieve net positive for overall society. I think that's the best way I can describe it. Sola, what do you think?
Yeah, for me, that's been a question that I've always been juggling in my mind. And I originally was, we like to joke around and call them Big L Libertarian, which is like the political party, the third ones, like they're running. And it's funny because they're always in favor of literally everything. Like their whole mentality is, yeah, you could do whatever you want as long as you're not harming anyone else. And to me, I used to support that. Then I looked into it more and thought, well, actually, there's a lot of things I don't agree with. Like examples, like if someone has an eating addiction and they are weighing 500 pounds at the age of 24 and they're already 1 foot in the grave, like I wouldn't sit there and see that person and think to myself, well, it's his body, he could do whatever he wants, and then just walk away. I would sit there and think, no, this is not a good thing. You're killing yourself. You're slowly eating yourself to death. And that's something I wouldn't mind stepping in and like, talking with him with, and I'm okay doing that. Even if he doesn't agree with me or even if he's pissed off at me, I'd be fine doing that because I know it's coming out of a place of like caring because I care for that person's life. Even if I don't know him, I want them to be alive. Like, but another example could be like a heroin addict. Like, let's say I'm walking downtown Atlanta and I see a dude who looks like they're 110 pounds, like doing a quick line and they're straight to the veins. And I'm not going to sit there and say to myself, well, is he harming anyone else around him? No, it's okay. And just walk away. I'm going to like try to intervene and be like, hey, I don't think this is a good thing for you to be doing. You need help. That doesn't mean I'm going to call the cops on him and be a snitch. Nah, catch me dead before I narc. Snitches get stitches. But it's like, I want to help them. And like at the core of me as a person, I want to help people and I want people to have the best life possible. And I see a major difference between, you doing something a different way. Like, I'm not going to freak out if, let's say, a mom is working full time and she makes six figures and a dad's like a house husband. I'm not going to freak out that, be like, oh my God, you're breaking the structure. But if it's something where you're literally like clear as day harming yourself, I'm not going to like just sit there and be like, it is what it is. Like, same as I would see, someone like shooting up drugs in their veins is them cutting themselves. If I have any like close relatives or friends, God forbid, that have done self harm, I'm gonna stop in and tell them like, no, this isn't okay. I'm not going to allow you to do this to yourself. And for me, you got to be very careful to walk that line between you being pious about it and you trying to be a know-it-all, be like, oh, I'm just burying you, I'm going to do this, because that's a wrong approach. You don't do it like that. But almost like Christ, you need to show agape love, where it's love of the most utmost highest degree, where you genuinely care for them as a being and as a person because you view them as your brother and sister in Christ. So I don't want to see any of my brothers or sisters in Christ, which are all humans, be harmed, and it just breaks my heart when I see that. Like, so that would be my answer to that. Like, make sure if you are going to be doing something, it's purely out of a place of care and love and not out of righteousness and like purity, if you will. Definitely always approach things not with pride but with humility. That's what I would say be my answer to that.
Hey, good shit. I think we exhausted that question. So
Yeah,
what
all
we
good.
got next in the doc there?
We're on a bit of a tangent.
Are you fine?
I got another question for you though, by 4G, speaking on that, and it's more of a religious one. So he's a buddy of mine from Africa, and he's really into like studying theology from different places. But he wanted to ask you, hazy dialects. Are you ever interested in dabbling in religion? If you are, have you researched any or looked into any in particular that interest you? So,
Um,
have you ever like looked into like religion stuff, like theology, like Buddhism or Islam or any of that stuff?
yeah. Currently I'm on my pagan arc right now. I've bought some antlers and everything. I currently eat berries exclusively. I really enjoy the nectar and all that. All jokes aside, in terms of growing up and my adolescence, I grew up in the church for the most part. My parents always emphasized us being free thinkers and searching for truth, whatever that might be. And but they always want us to have a foundation of things to choose from, a plethora, if one was looking towards, which is what led me to things like the Ketuvim, Genesis, Exodus, rereading up on some passages of the Bible because I find them to be very interesting texts to dabble upon. In terms of morally speaking, I can align myself with some people of religious faith and beliefs, but in terms of like what my truest of heart says about religion and the existence of a deity, it just doesn't align with that. So, as far as I'm concerned, I believe that it does hold a strong utility for people in terms of reforging their commitment towards the life and prosperity of others. But in terms of my like sincere beliefs, I couldn't posture myself as someone who is religious, knowing where I stand in terms of the credibility of the existence of it. I won't. I don't know. It deals with the unknowable to some degree because I'm not dead. So at best, I just ruminate and stay agnostic. I am the philosophical fence sitter of atheism and religion. You see, I'm the most insufferable of them all, the religious centrist. Yes, sir.
Oh, that's interesting. That's like James Madison, where he said like he believes in God, he just doesn't know which one. Where to him, the concept that there is no God, he laughed at that. He's like, that's absurd. Of course, there's a God. For him, it was just the issue of thinking like which one is God, if you will. Kind of like that. Does that make sense? Or
Um, what does he mean when he says that what is God? Like as in he believes that one of the passages or one of the literary books devoted to describing God might have applicability in terms of what they might actually be, or does he believe that conceptually speaking, he believes it to be almost like inconceivable that it doesn't exist a deity.
For him, he described himself, well, didn't really describe himself, but historians described him as being a theistic Gnostic, where he, without a shadow of a doubt, said, "Yes, I believe in a God. That's not even a question to me." Like for him, the concept of there is no God is laughable. Whereas like I can't even fathom a universe where there is no creator. His biggest issue where he's pondered in his life was he's like, I don't know, like you said, the literary, which like literature work is God, like which religion is God. Like he didn't know if it was Hinduism, he didn't know if like Christianity, Islam, Buddhism. He just knew like I know there's a God. I don't know which one. Are you more in line with that, or are you still even more on the fence?
In terms of literary works, I don't believe any of them have provided me a substantiary um, passage and when I can go where I went or said to myself, "Oh, this all makes sense, and this is absolutely God." In terms of my position, I think that it seems equally unreasonable to say definitively that there does not exist a God, as you would say vice versa. It's both positions to me are equally nonsensical, so that's why I am comfortably positioned as agnostic. Um,
No, so you're pretty split down the middle. Where you would you say like doesn't concern you as much? This is not a topic you find interest in, or
um, I've been in kind of a couple of debates where I was discussing during my 19 to 20 during my 2019 to 2021 circuit. I did a lot of debates discussing religion, and I think one of the things I thought was kind of fascinating that really comfortably cushioned me as being agnostic as I am is we were both discussing the Big Bang Theory and the idea of the pink elephant that holds up the earth or the world itself. And they discussed how like this ethereal being has been around before like existence in of itself, and it's unbeknownst to all of humanity and inaccessible to humanity. And I said, um, yes. And he said it's kind of like the Big Bang Theory. You weren't there. While technology currently, as it stands, has been able to see more remnants of the start of the universe, I would still say that we still don't know what's happened, like what existed prior to the Big Bang. Like, could you argue that another one going off? Like, it's still a theoretical like argument to have in that regard. But I had posited the following. I said that, granted, I don't have an answer to that argument, but I believe that I'm safely tethered to the understanding of reality due to understanding that much of what is replicated within our own reality and our understanding of it far more has overlap with the Big Bang than I believe it does with the idea or notion of the pink elephant that holds up the world. This is where I stand on it, and posit we both are operating with some level of presumption as to how the universe came to be, but I think that I have more safety tethers as to why it's more aligned with what I think currently it stands to be. But that's my position on it all, and why I came to my position I have now. Still,
no, that's fair. Yeah, it sounds good. Pretty solid. Let me see. What else do we got? A question from trying to find a good one for you. Oh, here's a good one by Organic Carbon. He's gonna be on our podcast later down the road, but he works with like studying like aquatic life. He asked, I really enjoy listening to you speak and your contributions on a podcast. Are you ever going to be on Twitter Spaces more or more active on Twitter? I'd love to hear your thoughts in a normal conversation. Thank you.
thank you. That's very nice to hear. I appreciate it, and I'm gearing up to I've been creating a lot of assets for a lot of other things for our project, for Requiem Radio, for the podcast, for the Twitter account, and I want to come back with a big swing. I want to have a frequent upload of content for the for my Twitter account as well as our Twitter account as well as a YouTube channel. So I will be returning back to Spaces, and I do have something planned for Twitter Spaces. It's a bit of a it's called I'm still working on the name. I don't know if I want to go with one-on-one, but one thing that I genuinely do love delving into and picking people's brains about is just psychology. I find myself fascinated and and enamored with it ever since um as I was young, I was kind of like the mediator amongst family members, and I delved into psychology very briefly for a short time being in community college. Never finished my courses, but suffice it to say, I've always been someone enamored with that. I want to find a way in which people can speak to me about the inner workings of their own mind and certain subjects and topics and matters, and hopefully we can have a little like playthrough run these coming weeks about that conceptually. But yeah, suffice it to say, I do plan on coming back to Twitter soon enough. I just been my body has been ravaged by unforeseen circumstances. But yeah, thank you. I do appreciate it, and I will be returning soon enough.
Yeah, I mentioned that during our last episode we had to do a Spider-Man one, where I was saying like you're pretty knocked out, which was unfortunate. I think you will really like the episode. Once we get it uploaded, I think you'd like to hear it. Let me see, what else do we have?
That's the
Oh,
Spider-Man episode.
yeah, that was probably, not gonna lie, the best episode we ever. Nah, I'm fucking with you. I'm not gonna get you like that.
Don't do this to me. Don't do this. Don't do
Oh
this.
gosh.
Don't be this
Oh,
guy.
here's a question by Shrapnel. Oh, two-part question. So I'm gonna do. Let's see, mine first. Hey, Requiem Radio, really love your guys' content. Regular listener, keep pushing out the good work. First question is for me. It is saying, do you have any special guests planned on in the future, preferably any animators? And a question for Hazy. You kind of answered this one already, but what got you into art and design, and what advice would you have for young people getting into animation? So for me, getting guest on, I'm looking to get a couple big accounts on in the future. The difficulty of that is that it takes a lot of work to reach them and get contacts from them and scheduling. I've been having this issue with a gentleman who's a very well tuned speaker, but he's from Australia, trying to work schedules out for that. I'm gonna have to bounce that around with Hazy as well as our Jamie of the team to get that working. Also, I am gonna be getting though a guest on who is a voice actor for the Warhammer 40K video games, so that should be fun to have him on and discuss that and talk about voice acting. But Hazy, what about your question? What advice would you give to young people getting into animation?
um, Animation, I would say that it all comes down to it's such a fundamental piece of advice, but practice is such an insanely quintessential thing. You should not look at art as the finished product, but as a incremental step towards something great. And what that means is basically you'll never achieve anything if you constantly look at the finished product. Because the finished product to most people is the unfeasible, is the impossible, is the impractical. It cannot exist. However, that animation you watch started off with a page, and it is nothing more than a sequence. It's similar to creating a sticky note bouncy ball animation. Originally, it was just one picture, but eventually it leads to a sequence of something that is a greater picture, a greater home. It's a sum of one greater part, and so long as you work on those things, you'll find yourself at a better place. Tubular Tunes, Tubular uh, is an artist who started off as a pretty amateurish, stylistically speaking, but if you look him up, his name is spelled Telepurte, I believe. And one thing that's fascinating about him is that he was one of those artists who shows that diligent passion and commitment to your craft is the thing that will accelerate your ability to commit to it and to put out other works of art to the public at large. Since he made a commitment to draw every single day for about a year or so. And in doing so, he had accelerated far beyond what anyone would think is possible. Some of the greatest artists are people you can look towards, like not greatest artists, but I think the greatest examples of what I'm referring to here is like someone like Eagle Raptor or Spaz Kid 3D or Oni Plays. All these guys are bastion of old animations of newground artists. But people like them started off very small, but eventually had such a stylistic impact on animation at one point that animators had devoted just projects solely to them and how people claimed that they were replicating styles, such as Eagle Raptor. But if you look at some of his earlier videos, they're crude, poorly put together, and quite sloppy. But you have to start somewhere. Psychic Pebble is a person, if you watch some of his older animations, they are similar in the way I've used and the scriptures I've used. But again, if you look at some of his older animations, you would probably never believe he's the same person who now has a series called Smiling Friends. Suffice it to say, um, people have the gift of gab where they'll improve within months on end, but um, never downplay your own passion, your own commitment towards it, and the best thing you can do is never, um, compare your progress and achievement towards other people within your sphere. The best you can do is be diligent in refining your own craft and seeing how far you've come in a set period of time, whether that be a year, a month, and often enough, what really helps you out is making a cliff note of things you understand now versus when you started. So that's everything I have for people who want to give it to animation and art.
Oh, nice. All right, sounds good. So a next question we have is from Isaiah, and for people who don't know, Isaiah was on my debate stage a while back. He's one of my first contenders. He's a really good old soul. Love that man to death. Of course, he had asked this. He wanted to know. This is one, I guess. Man, Hazy, you got a fan base right now. A question directed to Hazy again. I've been enjoying listening to a few of your episodes. My favorite ones were the Jack Bishop episode and the 10 episode, so the interview of 10. What is your opinion on black people who are right wing or conservative Republican? And would you look at them any differently as any other group? I understand what he means. He's talking about like, the Candace Owens and stuff like that, and how like media views them like just being black and like right wing. What's your thought on that?
You might like, you might not like what you find. I just reference
Uh-oh.
Planet of the Apes because it's a very fickle subject matter for me. While I do believe that there exists some pretty good figures when it comes to um, black conservatism, um, there are some people who are pretty, insightful individuals. Um, Sometimes I feel as though some of the particular biggest figureheads um, often stained the idea of being a black conservative, such as Candace Owens. I'm not particularly fond of her, and my biggest problem with her is that while she hates identity politics, she basically birthed her entire career out of being the
Yep.
black conservative of the political party, and it continuously leveraged that notion on different circumstances. Like the thing that made me have an animosity to her that was unlike anything else is when she claimed that um, the person who played Captain America was calling her the N-word because he called her ignorant, and this was literally the weaponization of her black identity, which I believe most black conservatives are absolutely opposed to, fervently so. Um, that is not to say that, like, idealistically, I like that because I think it is um, the strongest personification of the will and our will to do things
Well, let's like expand
regardless
it
of what.
even more then. What about not even conservative, but like right wing black people, like 10, for example? He's pretty far right wing, more than me, definitely. And he like chills and vibes. Like, what are
Yeah,
your
he
thoughts
was an
on
exceptional
yeah.
person. Yeah, yeah. I was gonna bring up some people like okay, so I have a myriad of reservations towards Candace Owens, but again, she has gotten her own media platform. She has sold out of books. She's part of one of the biggest conservative organizations out there. And then you can look at people like Fresh and Fit. You can look at people like Andrew Tate. You can look at the Tates. I do not like these people. I will reiterate this until the day I die. I do not agree with them morally or principally speaking. However, I believe that these people are substantive and meaningful in different capacities, just in terms of identities and being um, black, in the sense that um, with a lot of leftist analysis, which someone who is left leaning, I believe that it often creates some level of futility within our movement to some regard. That there is some complex system that is nebulous and almost almost incapable of articulating in the degrees in which it is sipped into the system and its intricacies, but is far more impactful and strong in its refinement of how it leads to absolute failure or abject failure for Black people growing up. Thus, I believe these individuals who do not succumb to these notions of aspirations for Black identities in America or in any other country, what have you, are equally as important to understand. You can understand that and take out everything else, but use them as a marker of achievements and success you can aspire and arise to. Ten was an exceptional member of the podcast. He came on, he discussed a lot of the things, and regard, that wasn't in spite of his identity, but that was almost abstract from it. Like it was independent of his identity. There was no
I like that a
retelling
lot.
or regaling
Yeah.
of that. So again, I think these people are very valuable in our understanding of like political discourse and analysis. And while I believe that there are still some things we can do to alleviate some of our social pressures and policy pressures that will ensure that people who are destitute, financially speaking, due to a lack of generational wealth, we do need these markers to show people that how far your aspirations and passions to your craft can take you. So, suffice it to say, I think that's the best way I can articulate that without
No, that's a well
having
way
my
of putting
opinions
it,
on
and
like
yeah, that's a well way of putting it. And add on to that too. I feel like you hit the nail on the head of like figureheads like Candace Owens, where there's so much against identity politics, but their whole political view revolves around their identity. And Ben Shapiro does this too. Every time there's a Israel-Palestine conflict, it's he goes from we shouldn't get involved in conflicts to being the biggest warmonger you ever seen on the face of the earth, being like America needs to like bring everything and nuke like Palestine.
I wonder
And
why wonder why he does that. Wonder
no,
why
and
he
it's like it's
does
fine, but
those
like
things.
no,
Like, wonder why
hear
he
me out. I don't care if you want to use your identity in that. Sure, no, I don't care. It's just the part where I draw the line is where you're hypocritical, where you're like, oh, anyone who uses identity politics is stupid. And then in the same breath use identity politics saying like as a Jewish man or as like, XYZ or
Yeah,
Candace
he
Owens
certainly
as a black
buckles under
man.
those merits. Yeah, he definitely does buckle under those merits. He's like, oh, identity politics is terrible. It's cringe. It's crude. It's a terrible
No, and
thing.
that's fine.
It's
Like
something that even
yeah.
tangentially anti-Semitic occurs. He's like, as a U.S. man, I'm like, oh,
A
bro,
personal
brother, this
example,
guy
I guess, for
sucks.
me, yeah. Personal example for me, I guess, is like I've said before in a Roberto episode, which we're gonna have to redo sometime, that like, hey, my bloodline and family is from Cuba. We directly were affected and had experiences with communism and leftist economic ideas. So no matter how good of a pitcher you could pitch me to like, communism, I can't in the very fiber of my being become a communist because that would be like me spitting on my family that suffered under communism, like spitting right in their face and being like, you guys weren't important. So it's okay, like, just be upfront of it. Like I'm gonna admit, yes, like this isn't some, source bro argument, this is purely anecdotal, but this is a primary motive for why I'm strongly against communism on top of other things like historical, like like knowing historical knowledge or like knowing basic economics, like supply demand stuff. But that would be one of my main things, definitely. But I feel like I don't know if you're familiar with a guy. He's called Colin Noir. He's a black like gun rights advocates where he's like one party. So he's like one party issue type guy where his only concern is guns. He doesn't care about anything else. And he is very knowledgeable in firearms, and I love listening to his videos. And he makes really good arguments, like bashing back against Democrats and like liberals, saying like, "Hey, most of these gun bans you guys put in place targeted black communities, and you guys are fucking us over. And you wonder why crime is so high is because like you're like basically not allowing good guys with guns to have guns, and only criminals are allowed to have like gangsters and stuff." But he doesn't really like. I like the way he does it because he openly says like, "Hey, I'm a black man." Like he's not against identity politics. He says like, I've seen how this affects neighborhoods, like families and stuff like that. But at the same breath, too, I feel like the left does the complete polar opposite, where the right, where you have like PragerU, puts them on a golden pedestal and throne and like brings them up. Yeah, PragerU is the personification of I can't be racist. I have black friends. If you want me to be honest, that's literally what they do with like Candace Owens.
You're
And
right though. Why he's
no,
spitting though?
no, that's literally what they do. But then on the other hand, you have like Hassan or Vosh, which I think is like we talk about him every episode, like dunking on him because he's a piece of shit human. Where they would like watch a video of a black conservative, and they would say shit that would make a Klansman blush. Like, "Okay, coon, I see you, lapdog. Yeah, guess right. Keep serving the white man." And I'm like, what the fuck? And it's like, how are you
Yeah,
in one breath being like, yeah, all Black Lives Matter. I support all black people. And in the moment, it's like, well, I'm a black person who doesn't agree with all your views. Oh, not you. You're a coon. You're like, a house slave. And I'm like, damn, like, that's fucked up,
yeah.
man. Like, he just doesn't support
Some of the
you.
language is kind
Like,
of questionable. Like, oh, like every one of these female black conservatives always have like this Becky hair. So like, this is kind of weird. So, this is kind of weird, bro. I wouldn't go down this road. Go down this road.
yeah, no, and it's
So,
fucked up and it's personified. There's a Twitter post that got viral, but it was after the ruling of Roe v. Wade, and it was under who's the name of the black Supreme Court justice? I forgot his name off the top of my head. He's the only guy. He's the black one on the court. Like all of them, old gentleman. Man, that's gonna irritate me. Wait, Hazy, do you know his name? Well, man, let me look this up. Justices. Oh, Clarence Thomas. There we go. Clarence Thomas.
I literally said Clarence Thomas, and I didn't notice I was muted.
Oh yeah, my bad, man. Yeah, but what's it called? Yeah, basically Clarence Thomas had on his account like a post of his reasonings why he ruled, against Roe v. Wade. And the top, like, what's it? One of the tweets in there was by like a liberal mom who had in her bio, vote blue no matter who, BLM, and it was somebody get this hard and hard R, nothing, just a hard R off the stage, and I thought, what? I'm like,
Still
woman,
don't.
what? Like, it was just like
Just
a
want to
middle-aged
say
mom, and I was like, that is insane. You got the BLM in the bio and everything.
it's like that Squidward moment where he jokes too hard on SpongeBob and he pranks him. He's
Oh
like,
yeah.
"What, guys? I thought we were what? I thought we were." Oh, by the way, I would never forgive the Conservative Party for taking two of our justices and just literally sitting on them and going, "Yep, we're just not gonna have."
Oh no, that
That
was
was like
big. I love
the
that. That was a big W for
most.
me. I was like, yeah, let's go.
It was
I'm
like,
like,
oh, brother, this guy.
let's go. I'm like, abortion overruled. I'm just throwing a party celebrating.
I'm saying like overruling, okay, but the thing that makes it kind of like to me, when people get disenfranchised with the system, there was ever a moment where I can see that completely like playing out in real time was them literally sitting on Obama's nomination for the Supreme Court, and they're just like, we're just not going to have a vote for him, and we're going to wait till you just basically get out of office, and that was like, especially when we see that they held trials for all the other Supreme Court justices, and basically we were basically like as the Democratic Party, we were just fucked out of a Supreme Court justice. So it's like,
Yeah, co-parter. That's my answer to that. Good. Like, if the system's rigged, I'm okay rigging it in my favor.
where's your IP address? I know you.
No, me. It's like, I don't care. I already acknowledge the system's broken. I want it to be broken for my team.
You know,
Oh
you know,
gosh.
who, you know who would be on your side, acceleration is communist. They would be like, you know what? The system is broken. We should.
Well, if the acceleration is communist tried me, they could try a 12 gauge shotgun, like getting barrel stuffed down their throat. They could try that real quick, like, oh, but combat, and then choking on like my shotgun. I'm like, it's okay, close your eyes. It's about to be over soon. Bing. But
What did the device happen to Jesus?
oh, like I said, it's I don't know.
You just
I
went
don't
mice and
trust.
men real quick. Holy crap.
No, I don't trust what's it any like communist revolution who say they want to side with like liberals or libertarians because their books talk about what they want to do to capitalists and people who aren't communists very clear. They said hang every capitalist and the last one to be the one who sold you the rope. And I'm like, I'm not fucking with people like this.
Listen. They don't mean that. What they mean is re-education camps that you're hanging
Yeah, no,
around.
yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
re-educational
Yeah, and what
camps.
I mean is, here's my shotgun. Like, get off my property.
Listen. Haven't you listen? Wouldn't you want people to go to a re-education camp where you spend the majority of the time with your feet suspended from the air due to like you hanging around? That's their idea. They're like, you know what? Education, no camps for everybody.
Yeah, nah, it'd be a cold day in hell. A cold day in hell. But
You said you're gonna have to take me first. You're gonna have
yeah,
to.
no, they're gonna have to take my ass first and the whole like my firearms. Yeah, that I unfortunately lost in a boating accident, ATF. So I have no firearms at this moment. So yeah, lost in a boating accident. You don't have to come investigate me. I'm completely sane, functional member of society. I'm good.
A
But
peculiar circumstance.
yeah, what a coincidence! I lost him in a boating accident, man. It's just like crazy. All right, let's get this next question knocked out. This is gonna be the last one. We're gonna do like some wrap ups, but from Tweetathon, last but definitely not least, do you guys ever think it's dangerous to engage in philosophy, as in that people might get refuted on some point or not be able to answer a challenge and change their views in a meaningful way? For example, a person may realize creation from nothing is nonsense and leave their faith. So yeah, Tweetathon, we need to get you into Thomistic spaces and have a little chat about that. But that last part was a jab to me. I know what that was. That was a running gag. But yeah, what do you think about that?
So it's like, step into my office.
Yeah, I'm like, nah, I know what that last part was. You got me there.
But what do you think about that?
For me, do I think philosophy is dangerous? No, because I don't agree with the false dichotomy that philosophy and religion oppose each other. Same as I don't agree with the false dichotomy that philosophy or no, sorry, religion and science opposes each other. Both those things go hand in hand. Like there's a funny quote saying like, Christ didn't show up to take your brain away, he came to take your sins. Whereas like people have this like display of like, I guess you blame the Protestants and the Baptists for this being very anti-science to the point where it's just like making us look bad. I'm like, dude, that's not what like Christianity is. But for me, I definitely believe philosophy could be dangerous if you're not in the right headspace. Probably the lowest point in my life when I was reading a lot of philosophy, I think we had this conversation before, like Nietzsche and stuff like that, or Schopenhauer, was when I was going through my atheist phase and I was just very nihilistic and just angry and miserable at the world. And it can be definitely dangerous if you're not in the right headspace, but I could reread these literature pieces today and be inspired and moved, even if I don't agree with the substance being discussed. If that makes any sense. So definitely, as I said at the beginning of the podcast as well, Tweetathon, my core belief is iron sharpens iron. So not only do I not avoid these ideas, but I openly embrace it and invite it. Like, I'm basically Hanayama from Baki. I don't dodge no hits. I take that shit. I just keep going forward. But yeah, that's my view on that. What about you?
I don't think I could ever, in good faith, um, tell somebody to stray away from philosophy or thinking about something in such an intimate fashion. To me, it feels like I am admitting to some level of cowardice to concede to the notion that if somebody thought about what I believe or my values or beliefs hard enough, they would understand them to be useless or without utility. If I believe that like someone could, if I believe that I could not provide good reason as to why helping your fellow man is apropos or good for society in its long trajectory, and I wouldn't perceive myself as someone a worthwhile speaker in any capacity. Like, um, if I could you imagine, for example, if like if just for the purposes of just for the purposes of just entertaining the conversation, if I couldn't give somebody a rational reason as to why like the Holocaust was bad, I would just consider myself like a person who just deserved whatever system to overtake it. Like if I couldn't speak towards that, if I couldn't like ration that, I would just be like I'm conceding to better ideas, whatever that might be, not morally, but logically. People are going to see me as a coward, as intellectually cowardice, or as somebody who could not stand on more principles and beliefs. Holistically, I believe that it only makes sense to put yourself through some sort of philosophical rigor and to understand the best way to expedite your ideas and beliefs to the public at large. And if your ideas require some level of obfuscation to truly not accept what someone is discussing or talking about, then I don't know what to tell you. Recently, JJ's a TikToker. He's an excellent TikToker, but he was on with Michael Knowles, and like there's a conversation, but there was a moment within the debate where Michael Knowles was talking to him about abortion, and both of them were talking about society and like the happiness and the prosperity of it. And AJ said, "Well, I believe that um, the danger and people losing their bodily autonomy once life is has been understood to exist within somebody's body. So what do you mean by body autonomy? Like, body autonomy is like like you saying they can't go to Kroger's or something? Like it then JJ just looked at him and said, "What do you think I mean when I say body autonomy? Do you think I'm like saying like people can go to like the mall or something?" He's like, "Yeah, it's implied." I'm like, it makes you seem like if Michael knows he's been doing this for long enough, and he is somebody who has been doing a lot of he's a very passionate person, and um I tip my hat to being somebody who's one of the most influential people on the platform. But when you engage with a question like that, understanding, and for the most part, everyone knows what he's referring to. It makes you come across as cowardice, even if that's never the intention. By being aloof in such a nature, by obfuscating, which you clearly know what the person is referring to, it makes you come across as your at least your advocacy to be ineffective. So that's why I would never like encourage the notion that you need to obfuscate people like readily think about this fervently because
It would definitely
they
be case by case for me because, like I said earlier, if I know someone's like in a very existential dread state of mind where their worldview is like very much in question or like freaking out, I wouldn't encourage them to read heavy literature that could make them more paranoid or even worse, suicidal. Because there are a lot of philosophers who do dabble into that stuff very calculus, methodical, and coldly. Where if you're not well read or endowed in philosophy, it can be dangerous to get into. Like even Nietzsche, he said as a warning, "Beware those who read me, for I am like a stick of dynamite." When he's describing his words, like it could blow up in your face if you're not careful. But definitely agree with the rationalism stuff you're saying. Like, hey, you should be able to like engage in conversations about certain things that should be obvious. You know. But
like
you
I
want to add
would
like,
exactly
anything
like
else?
I wouldn't tell somebody like, oh man, like does reality have any purpose? Like I wouldn't tell them to like delve into like zero or like delve into like absurdism. Like I wouldn't like I probably wouldn't a Frankfurt or like I wouldn't or like or Nietzsche. Like I wouldn't want them to go into Nietzsche. Like yeah, I was like maybe if someone's having some like ideas of like ideations, I probably wouldn't recommend them like the philosophy of asceticism. I probably wouldn't tell them to like look into those. Like maybe they probably will
One
come
month
across with the
later, it's
wrong.
like the person's 1 month later, is the person's mom calling you. Was like, "Hey, is this a hazy dialect?" It's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Well, fuck you, you piece of shit. My son's dead because of you. He's dead." And then you're like, "What did I do?" And
I
like,
would, I
"I found a
was
copy of Misha in his room." And like, "Oh no."
Scooby snacks. Why would you give them
Like,
that for
what?
first?
Okay.
Whoa, Raggy.
Oh god, what, bro? Oh gosh. Yeah. Honestly, I think that should be wrapping up our episode for tonight, though, because we started around 7:25. Yeah, so we're about like over a little bit over 1:30. Last question before we go, and all right, don't get mad at me at this one. Just don't be a little salty. Let me find it.
Me
Oh
salty? I've
yeah,
never been that type of person. Me?
oh yeah. From Red Hen Tart Cherry. He wants to. Well, she wants to know who's better at Mortal Kombat or fighting games in general. Yeah, so I didn't really want to bring it up because it's not really a question. It's just an obvious objective truth. Like I'm just fucking better at you at like every fighting game. Like I'm just based. Like I play all the fighting games. Like I don't lose. I am that
I'm
guy.
Oh, really? Really? Oh, okay. So you're the Street Fighter, Tekken, you're
Yeah,
that guy.
Dead or
You're
Alive,
Deado,
all of those games,
Virtual
even
Fighter.
the really, oh yeah, even the super niche ones that only have a player base of 30 people. I'm the best at that. Like, I
Low
just
key, not
strive to
gonna
be
lie.
the
Low key, there's
best.
only a few games where you feel bad for not understanding how to play it, and it's probably Gear to Gear. Gear to Gear is one of the few games like, all right, I
Over
feel
here just
bad
sitting
not.
down mad capping right now. Be like, yeah, I played that game. It's like me, like, oh,
It's
nah, but the
unironically
main
the most.
games,
All right.
yeah, I'd say the main four I play Soul Calibur, Dead or Alive. Well, main five. Soul Calibur, Dead or Alive, Tekken, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat. Those are the top five I play.
We'll have to like get ourselves some video footage one day.
Oh yeah,
I'll
no,
just
we
edit
get.
it in
Oh
of
yeah,
me 6-0ing this man one day. Just
oh yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. I ain't taking no L like that. No, we could get into streaming late down the road. That'd be actually fun. Where I could just be like whooping your ass and shit. But
oh no, quiet, confident declaration. Oh, okay.
oh gosh, we're gonna look back at like, hey, remember season 2, episode 1? I'm like, yeah. What about it? You're like, okay, good. I'm like,
I'm
oh,
gonna depending on how it goes, I'm literally going to King Crimson what's happening right now.
oh no. All right. Yeah. Well, hey, Hazy, you want to hit us with the outro?
Thank you for hearing and watching Requiem Radio. I'm Hazy Dialects, and you've seen this all in HD.